I hope we got that on video, two men trying to put a jacket on. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with our program, it's my pleasure and honor to bring Vanessa Baker up. Vanessa is the daughter of Honorary Joe Ayala, and she will make that presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Robert. My name is Vanessa Baker, and it's my privilege to be the person who will present my dad, Joe Ayala, to you as an inductee to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Many of you who know my dad know how humble he is and how hard it is for him to be praised, especially in public. I'm sorry about that, Dad, but here it goes. I got two words for you about my dad: family and faith. I want to tell you a story about a young boy, 12 years old, whose mother placed him on a train from Wichita to Chicago by himself to help a family member who just had a baby. He spent his summer break there helping out, not just one summer, but several summers in a row. When he told me this story, I was a bit in awe because my dad doesn't complain about helping anybody. And he told me, he said, you know, you do what you have to do to help your family. Then in high school, under the direction of Coach R.J. Stub Mayo at Wichita East, he wrestled his sophomore and junior years. He didn't hardly get to practice because every day and weekends were spent working to help his family. Coach Mayo told him that had he been able to practice, he would have been an even better wrestler. But my dad wanted to help his family. Even at that, his senior year at West High, he lettered in wrestling. Please know on behalf of all 5 of my other siblings and me, we think our mom is pretty awesome too. So just know that our love and esteem for our dad is parallel to our love and esteem for our mom, but tonight is about him and wrestling. So, in the mid-70s, when my brother Monty joined the WWC, the Wichita Wrestling Club, my dad met Tony Bonds, you've heard that name before, founder and general manager of the WWC. Tony is perhaps the one individual that directly impacted my dad's future in youth wrestling. In addition, I think you've heard this name before too, Dwayne Miller, KMC's legendary former head wrestling coach, had a tremendous influence in Dad's involvement. My dad was a board member of WWC until Tony's departure in the early 80s, when my dad succeeded him as general manager. Dad was a board member of the Mid-Kansas Wrestling Association in the 70s and 80s. He was invited by KMC High School administration to serve on committees to assist in the process of selecting their new head wrestling coach when Mr. Miller left. He served on the board as well as director of District 2 of the United States of America Wrestling, Kansas Kids, for several years. He served as both the appointed and elected at-large representative of USAW Kansas Kids organization for a number of years. He accepted the nomination for 1994 District 2 and State Persons of the Year, and he was also named the recipient of the 1994 District 2 Person of the Year. My dad is currently involved at the high school level by helping work scores tables with Kenny Schmidt at the GWA Duels, Kansas Class 5A Regionals, and finally the State 5A Tournament. Since 2006, my dad has been the manager of the table workers for the state tournament, assisted by Kenny Schmidt. And according to Kenny Schmidt, quote, Tony Bonds knew what he was doing when he appointed Joe to run WWC. He was dedicated from the beginning, and when Joe said something, everyone listened. because we trusted he would always do the right thing for the club, end quote. In the early 2000s, Dad realized that WWC needed someone with more energy and innovative ideas than he could provide. To this end, he was finally able to convince Lyndon Mons that he was the logical person to carry the torch and continue to maintain the tradition of excellence that Lyndon's father Tony had established. According to Lyndon, quote, "Joe was always the dedicated, steady, dependable rock. I don't think there's anyone else who comes close to holding the WWC program together more than him. How many countless hours he must have spent in that wrestling room and gym. I know he was the one who opened the gym for Kendall Hirschberger and me when we wrestled some old-timer tournaments in our 30s. I also think Joe was one of, if not the biggest promoter of WWC graduates, continuing on to Capon, and very responsible for KMC's wrestling dynasty. Personally, I believe that Joe is an outstanding example of someone having a passion and love for something and doing everything he can to make it better for everyone else. His current involvement with the high school state tournament allows an opportunity for many of us to give back as well." End quote. My dad has gradually reduced his involvement in the club, but still available in an advisory capacity. And by the way, Lyndon retired from WWC, and in 2007, my brother Jason Ayala volunteered to continue managing the club, and he still manages it today. Wrestling is in our family's blood to a degree, as two of my brothers, Monty and Jason, were both talented wrestlers as kids and in high school, both competing at state level several times each. Monty shared with me that our dad was always there when something needed to be done. The coaches would coach, and my dad would take care of the logistics, fees, paperwork, uniforms, mopping the mats, etc. He said, quote, "I remember Dad was always there for me, pushing me and not allowing me to quit. I didn't like it then, but as an adult, I appreciate it. Dad was never outwardly emotional, and I remember one of my matches at a regional against a kid named Marty Villers from Arc City. I threw a lateral drop on him unexpectedly and pinned him to win the regionals. Someone told me that when that happened, the crowd went crazy, and my dad had tears in his eyes. We never talked about it, but that meant a lot to me." End quote. Monty's son, Loudon, also wrestled WWC and KMC. Loudon told me that his grandpa has a way of coaching positively and not letting you get down on yourself. According to Loudon, quote, "All the guys say he's the godfather of wrestling," end quote. My brother Jason echoes much the same as Monty about my dad's presence and encouragement during their wrestling years. He also says that Dad taught him by example the right way to run a club and a district with integrity. It makes him want to follow in Dad's footsteps. Jason's son Adam, who wrestled WWC and is currently a KMC wrestler, says about his grandpa Joe, quote, "He's made the Ayala name known for wrestling, and it inspires me to do the best I can and make him proud," end quote. As far as the females in our family go, the only way for us to get on the mat was as a cheerleader. And I'm proud to share that I got to be a wrestling cheerleader at KMC 1978, 79, and 80, when Dwayne Miller was coaching a very dominant KMC program. At that time, as far as coveted cheer spots go, wrestling ranked over football and basketball. It was awesome, and I loved it. Monty's daughters, Bridget and Vivian, were both wrestling cheerleaders, and Vivian's still currently a wrestling cheerleader at Capon, and she does a great job. All of this to make the point of the influence my dad's involvement in the sport has had on our whole family. You could say that wrestling is his second family, and in that regard, my dad's sense of responsibility to his second family is only outdone by his responsibility to his first family. My mom came up to me this morning and she said, "There's something I want you to say." about your dad. I wasn't going to get emotional. I've read this speech about 50 times. She said, please let everybody know the most important thing about this investment that your dad and I have made in wrestling is that there are so many young men out there who are better people because of what your dad has been able to do in this community. And that's worth every minute that we spent in the wrestling community. Young boys becoming wonderful young men, becoming wonderful dads, and great people to carry on the traditions. Finally, but most importantly, my dad's faith. One of my favorite books is called The Living Reminder by Henry Nouwen. The gist of the book is that as Christians, we live our faith by being a living reminder of God in the person of Jesus to everyone that we meet. People can come to know a little bit about God through our own lives and how we treat one another. What attributes of God do people see in us? For my dad, among other things, unconditional love, integrity, honesty, selflessness, gratitude, forgiveness, and the list goes on and on. My dad would say his faith is very private, but not really, in my opinion, because he lives his faith and therefore makes it very public. I, for one, am so grateful and praise God every day for this fact. As a committee, you couldn't ask for a more excellent representative of all that is good and honorable in your sport by naming him to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. So please join me, my siblings, other family members, and friends present tonight, in a warm round of applause as I introduce to you my dad, Joe Ayala.
What can I say? Set it off. Hear me now? Holy smokes. All these things I wanted to say. Right now I'm at a loss for words. Thanks, Vanessa. Did an outstanding job. Bob and Heather, you've done a heck of a job organizing this event, honoring this class of Kansas chapter of National Wrestling Hall of Fame Museum. I think this is the 8th class, right, Bob?
Yes, sir.
I was at the 2004 induction for Tony Bonts and some of the visionaries. Very impressive. Right here. And that really impressed me that these folks from the National Wrestling Hall of Fame do an outstanding job. We've been blessed throughout the years to be associated and supported by numerous folks. I hope you don't mind if I read this because I'm just a little bit choked up. At the club level, as well as at the state and national level. I want to thank all of them for including past and present WWC parents and kids, coaches, benefactors, for the ongoing support. At this time, I'm sorry that I cannot enumerate all of these individuals. They're just a countless number. Time constraints, and right now, memory recall issues. I want to thank USA Wrestling Kids, Kansas Kids Wrestling, State Chairman Mike Juby and his wife Kathy. Kathy's in charge of membership for past and present members. And especially Mike for supporting Lyndon and Jason in the transition. It's been very easy for me to do what I've done for almost 30 years, because when Tony Bonds left WWC, he left a well-oiled machine. Tony was a tremendous person in the sport of youth wrestling. WWC is called Cape and Mount Carmel Catholic High School, home from the very beginning, almost 45 years ago. We are truly blessed to enjoy the generosity of previous KMC administrations and that of the current president, Rob Knapp, and his staff, especially head wrestling coach Tim Dryden and his assistants. Louis Spangler, Tim Nance, Jacob Klein, and Frank Jonas. Tim, Jacob, and Frank are all WWC alumni. Finally, my heartfelt thanks to my family for its unwavering support during all of these years, especially to Lou, my loving, patient spouse of over 57 years. Although she almost never quite shared my enthusiasm for the sport, for various and sundry reasons, not the least of which is weight control prior to the kids' competition. She has been and remains an avid fan and fierce supporter. So in closing, on behalf of Lou, my family, and everyone that has been involved and supported us through the years, as we've tried to perpetuate the legacy initiated by many years ago by the founding visionaries, Tony Bonds, Tom Faust, Francis J., Doc Hagan, Lawrence Alley, and many others. I am deeply honored to join the other members of the 2015 class of the Kansas chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Museum.
Ladies and gentlemen, making the presentation of the honorary jacket will be Vanessa. And did you get voted by the family? Is that, there's a lot of family here. Bill,
When he tells you to do something, you do it.
okay, I learned that. And making the plaque presentation, Heather Wilson. Mr. Joe Ayala, our newest inductee.